The nobles around the scene reacted in shock and panic. They were overwhelmed by what had just happened and struggled to understand the sudden turn of events. Everyone was desperately wondering what exactly had occurred and what had happened to the magic beast. At that moment, the great elder watched the aftermath with a stunned expression. In his mind, he analyzed the situation and realized that the undead creature had been dragged into a violent whirl of magical power and completely torn apart. The destruction had not come from any refined technique. Instead, it had been pure brute force driven by the overwhelming quality and quantity of magical power. To the great elder, the result was not entirely unexpected for someone who possessed the power of the 7 wings. Still processing what he had witnessed, the great elder turned his attention to Aster's father and wondered if this outcome had been something he had planned beforehand. Aster's father reacted with visible shock and nervousness. Even he admitted internally that he had never expected such a result and felt surprised by how much his son had grown. Nearby, the blue-haired count addressed the great elder with respect. He calmly brought the discussion back to the purpose of the event and asked whether Aster had successfully passed the test. The great elder responded with a dark and serious expression. From his perspective, there was no one present who could reasonably object to the result. Hearing this confirmation, the count then turned toward Aster and informed him that the test had been passed. He encouraged Aster to come up. Aster responded with a faint smile while looking at the aftermath of the battle. He explained that the chain he had used earlier to return had been destroyed during the attacks. Because of that, he requested that someone lower a rope so he could climb back up. As the situation settled, the scene shifted smoothly to a later moment where the great elder and Aster were speaking privately. The great elder calmly remarked that an opportunity like this would not come again if Aster allowed it to pass. Aster acknowledged the situation and responded without hesitation. He explained that he had no interest in disputing the succession of the main family. He believed that if someone like him continued to linger around the mansion, his cousins would never feel at ease. According to Aster, his rightful place was within the HEIR house. Hearing this, the great elder suddenly burst into laughter. However, his laughter carried a hint of sharp insight. He remarked that Aster's words sounded humble on the surface, yet they could not hide the ambition clearly visible within his eyes. At that moment, Aster reacted with shock as he realized that the great elder had seen straight through him. The great elder looked directly at Lagasso and calmly brought up a serious matter. He wondered whether Lagasso planned to point his sword toward Elmheim in the future. His words carried a deeper implication, suggesting the possibility that Lagasso's true target might one day become Roderick's head. Seeing the sudden tension, the great elder laughed lightly and told him not to become so defensive. For the moment, he had no intention of digging further into Lagasso's thoughts. Aster then questioned the situation. He wondered why the elder was speaking this way, when the rebels were supposed to be their enemies. The great elder calmly clarified the truth. According to him, even their own side was not a completely united bloc. He then explained that Roderick possessed an extremely strong character. Because of that, Aster's existence served as a kind of limiting force that kept Roderick in check. And in that sense, it was acceptable. However, the elder added a clear warning. If Aster ever showed his fangs toward him, the consequences would be obvious. Hearing those words, Aster felt irritation rise inside him and silently cursed the terrifying old monster of Elmheim. Soon after, the conversation ended, and Aster returned to his father. His father asked whether he had finished speaking with the elder and wanted to know what had been said. Aster calmly explained that the elder had offered to bring him into the main family, but he had refused the offer. His father reacted with shock and disappointment, feeling that such an opportunity had been wasted. Nearby, the count added that if Aster had officially joined the main family, he could have received far greater benefits than what he had now. Aster then turned toward the count and recognized him as Earl Mays. He asked why Lena had earlier made a proposal that seemed to help him. The count appeared slightly awkward and explained that it had simply been an attempt to irritate Lin Poco, who had seemed arrogant at the time. However, he quickly changed the topic and pointed out something far more important. From that moment onward, both in name and in reality, Aster had become someone who possessed the 7 wings. He then told Aster to look around. All the surrounding counts were already whispering among themselves. They were quietly acknowledging that this was exactly what it meant to possess the 7 wings. Among the nobles, several thoughts began to surface. Some of them were filled with intense desire, feeling that such power absolutely had to fall into their own hands. Others thought more coldly, believing that before Aster could become an obstacle, it might be better to remove him while he was still just a child. In their minds, there were many ways he could still be used. Noticing the situation, Count Maze gently placed his hand on Aster's shoulder. He reminded Aster that the emblem of the 7 wings already carried enormous name value on its own. Because of that, from this moment forward, the number of people watching him closely would increase in many different ways. Aster looked at him carefully and wondered if the Count himself was also one of those people. The Count calmly revealed another detail about himself. Despite how it might appear, he was actually a member of the board of the Knights Academy. Then he pointed toward the other Counts nearby and explained that creating obstacles for promising young people was also part of his job. He even mentioned that one of the men standing there was in the same position as him. With that said, the blue-haired Count began to leave. As he walked away, he expressed that he was looking forward to the day Aster would enter their academy. He confidently stated that they would meet again soon. Watching him leave, Aster quietly reflected that the man was quite strange. For now, it still felt too early to consider him an ally. Soon after, Aster's father placed his hand on his shoulder and suggested that they should leave as well. He said they needed to tell Aster's sisters about the impressive performance he had shown that day. Hearing this, Aster gave an awkward smile. He felt a little worried, knowing that if his mother saw the wounds covering his body, she would probably faint on the spot. The report reached the captain of the Knights, who was also Aster's uncle. A knight informed him that young Dariz had died during the test imposed on him by Sir Zenys the other. The captain quietly acknowledged the report. The knight continued by explaining that he had also heard that Heifrid's son had been summoned by the elders of the head family. The captain asked what had happened to him. The knight silently wondered whether the captain truly did not care about his own son. Despite that thought, the knight confirmed that he also had something to report regarding that matter. The captain instructed him to speak. As expected, the report revealed that the boy also possessed the 7 wings. The knight asked in surprise whether the captain had already known about it. The captain reflected that if things continued like this, the balance of power that had been maintained within Elmheim for so long could collapse. The knight suggested that they should take some action. However, the captain dismissed the concern and told him to leave it alone. He believed that if Elmheim could be shaken by an obstacle at this level, the kingdom would have already become extinct long ago. He added that although he was not in a hurry, sooner or later the 7 wings would belong to him. Until that time, he intended to let the boy enjoy his freedom. He thought about watching how long the escaped child could continue to survive. When that day finally arrived, he intended to entertain himself for a while with the boy who possessed the 7 wings, Ash. 4 years later, the scene shifted to the Knight Academy entrance examination. The grounds were filled with applicants, as knights directed them toward registration. They instructed the candidates for the Dorasal Knights Academy entrance exam to proceed to registration and to move quickly to the next point after finishing. As the crowd gathered, a young man appeared. The moment people saw him, whispers spread among the applicants. Many recognized the face and began murmuring about the famous individual. Some doubted it could truly be him, since they had heard he used to be a much more corpulent guy. Meanwhile, the examiner continued the formal procedure, explaining that neither the kingdom nor the Knight's Order would be held liable for any injuries or accidents that occurred during the exam. Applicants were told that if they agreed, they had to sign the document. After signing, they were required to present their wings emblem, because the Academy could not accept someone without magical power. Soon the examiner reached the name of one candidate. The examiner prepared to check the wing emblem of Aster F. Elmheim. At that moment, the examiner looked up at the young man standing before him and froze in shock. The person standing there was none other than Aster himself. With a faint smirk, Aster remarked that the examiner had asked him to show the emblem. However, he explained that his emblem was in a somewhat difficult place to display. Because of that, he wondered if it would be possible for him to simply get by with showing his face instead.